Okay. A good davach, a freilich davach. This week we celebrated Gimel Tammuz, and this coming week is the 12th of Tammuz. The previous Rebbe's imprisonment began on the 15th of Sivan, and on the 3rd of Tammuz, he was allowed to leave the imprisonment and move to the city of Kostroma. Officially, the government sentence was they should be there for years in exile. But miraculously, 9 days after his departure from imprisonment to Kostroma, he was released. And the anniversary of his redemption is not just a redemption for him, but as the previous Rebbe wrote, this is a day of redemption not only for myself, but for all those who love the Torah, all those who cherish mitzvahs, and even those who are merely nicknamed Jews. It's a redemption for everyone. And in the time of the previous Rebbe, being involved with his activities meant to put your life on the line. Teach Torah on the ground was something that was punishable by exile to gulags in Siberian labor camps, or worse, or death. And yet the Chassidim of the previous Rebbe threw caution to the winds, and they did this. They went to far-off cities just to build an underground school, teach children Torah, teach a child Kamat Alafah. And kind of sacrifice that they exhibited is extraordinary. It brings to mind the time of the Second Temple. Time of the Second Temple, there were many people who wanted the distinction of being the Kohen Gadol. They wanted to be the high priest. And the thing was, if you were the high priest, you would have to go into the Holy of Holies once a year on Yom Kippur. But the thing was, if you made one mistake all year, you wouldn't survive that visit to the Holy of Holies. You go into the Holy of Holies, actually they put a string around the Kohen Gadol's, a rope around his feet, so that if he passed away in the Holy of Holies, they would be able to pull him out. And yet, despite the fact that there was such a such a danger of entering the Holy of Holies, people really wanted. People bid high to have that honor, of giving their souls up to Hashem. So in a similar way, the previous Rebbe said there'll come a time where people would want to have this distinction of giving their lives for the sake of Hashem. In Russia, when the lives were threatened, but that Baruch Hashem, that time period is ended. We don't have that kind of death threats to keep Torah mitzvahs. Thank God we're allowed to keep Torah mitzvahs fully as much as we want in America and throughout the world. But on the other hand, we learn from the story of Yibes Tammuz how devoted and how Hashem responds to a Jew devoting himself to a mitzvah despite all odds, despite it being impossible to fulfill the mission of the previous Rebbe, yet somehow this went on day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. People went and they taught Torah on the ground. And today, the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren of those who study Torah on the ground it changed generations and generations forever. And the day of the previous Rebbe's redemption brought an exponential growth in Torah and Judaism that really, as the Rebbe described, was a preparation and is a preparation of the coming Mashiach. So this day of the coming that's coming, the 12th of Tammuz, highlights the power of our souls and how we're able to really accomplish far more than we may think. So I was thinking about the upcoming day of redemption and the kind of devotion that we need to have today, despite there not being anyone challenging our lives, thank God. And I thought it would be interesting to look at the first Chassidim. the first Chassidim of the Baal Shemtov, and how they looked and their missions they were given by their Rebbe. I think if looking at their devotion will give us some insight of the call of the hour, each of us, in our individual personal mission that we have. We learned today in Rashi, the Torah this week, Rashi comments how the Jewish people are called Moshe, and Moshe is called the Jewish people because the leader of the generation is like the entire generation. The leader of the generation, Rashi says, is everything. He's connected to all. All are connected to him, and he's connected to all. And that's why it says in Tanya that Hashem originally wanted to create the world with the attribute of justice to conceal godliness completely, but he saw the world would not be able to exist without the miracles and wonders of Hashem, and specifically, it is the tzaddikim in every generation. The Torah says there is a tzaddik in every generation. There's a tzaddik, the foundation of the world, and through him there's a godly revelation that is everyone in the world could see, and miracles that the whole world could see, as we saw with the previous Rebbe's redemption. There was an obvious and clear miracle to the whole world, his redemption. So I think this story about the Baal Shem Tov and his Chassidim, imagine how they Farbrengen together. Imagine how the Chassidim and the Baal Shem Tov Farbrengen together. So I'm going to share with you a Farbrengen of the Chassidim and the Baal Shem Tov, what they understood their role was, how they looked at their Rebbe. I think this gives us an insight to how we're meant to look at the Rebbe and how we're meant to look at our missions. And with no further ado, let's begin. So the story I'm going to share with you is from what Chassidim called the Lange Brief, the long letter that the previous Rebbe sent to his daughter, Rebbetzin Chaim Mishka, the Rebbe's wife. This long letter describes a certain chassid of the Baal Shem Tov named Reb Mordechai, who took on the position of the town preacher in the city of Dubrovna. And so he, at one point, was trying to convey to the city of Dubrovna, the people in the city, who the Baal Shem Tov was and who he is. Then was the Rebbe, and so there was a guy named Avram Shaul who spent a Shabbos in Arsha, the Shabbos before Slichas. It's a very, very important Shabbos, the Shabbos which begins the whole new era of the new year. And so they had the Shabbos before reciting the prayers of forgiveness. They had the town preacher, Reb Nachum Parush, share words before the community, before they're going to recite the words of supplication, asking God for forgiveness. And so Avram Shaul is in the audience, and he was so distraught by the words that Nachum Parush was saying. Nachum Parush was known to be a great genius with simple metaphors, able to explain amazing, deep concepts with simple examples. But he was indignant he was shocked by the words that he said. What did he say? He said, if we return to God, we do teshuvah, then God will bless those who do teshuvah with a good year. But those who do not return to God, they'll get sick. And he started talking about all kinds of terrible calamities that would happen to the men, women, and children of the town, for those who will not do teshuvah. And so this Avram Shaul was listening to this. It's like it hurt him to listen to it. It was so off-putting. But then he came to Dubrovna. It was a regular day. The synagogue was full of people. People were coming in. Then he discovered that Reb Mordechai, this chassid of the Baal Shem Tov, was going to speak. What did he say? It's the beginning of the month of Elul, and he says a teaching about a soul that sins. And when people hear him, he's speaking with a lot of love, and a lot of patience, and a lot of understanding. But the people are thinking about a soul that sins and what that means, and they're really like emotional. But Reb Mordechai, the way he addressed them was this. He said, God listens to us. And when a person returns to God sincerely, God hears him. God forgives him. And God blesses him with a good year. And what about those who did not return to God? Like the same question that the other guy asked. And those don't return to God, and the merit of those who return to God, they will also be blessed with a good year. Because of those who return to God, that God will inspire all the Jewish people, including those who are not taking initiative. In the merit of those who return to Hashem, they also will be inspired. They also return to Hashem. They all will all be blessed. It was clear to this Avram Shaul was watching this that this Maggid was very different than the other Maggid. How this student of Baal Shemtov had a whole different message, had so much love that was in his words, so much love in his heart. How he was speaking to them with such kindness and such warmth, and he was really touched. And the one thing that bothered him was the people told him that Mordechai was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. This wasn't such public knowledge. And he heard terrible things about the Baal Shem Tov. And he came to the conclusion that it must not be true. It must be this guy is not really a student of the Baal Shem Tov. And it was all hearsay. It was not true. It's not real. Because such a guy like this, it can't be that he would be a student of the Baal Shem Tov because he knew that the Baal Shem Tov was no good. While he has all these thoughts, Reb Mordechai says, I want to share with you a story. While I was by the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, and when he said those words, Rabbi Avram Shaul noticed the whole town was quiet. He wasn't in the town for a while, but he noticed there was a different kind of regard. Everyone was like, Baal Shem Tov, story of Baal Shem Tov. They're like bated breath. What's Baal Shem Tov saying? What's the story? So the Maggid had this custom where every Shabbos in the month of Elul, before Mincha, he would say a sermon, and each sermon he would say a story of the Baal Shem Tov. On the first Shabbos, the Maggid said the following story. He said that he studied in yeshiva in Smargon. He was learning in that yeshiva with other prominent students. He was well versed. He had completed the entire Babylonian Talmud, the entire Jerusalem Talmud. He had learned various books of Musar. He had learned a whole array of Kabbalistic texts. And he couldn't figure out why is it that God did not send Elijah the prophet to teach him Torah. That was and before he was Hasidically challenged. And they was thinking, I deserve that. Why didn't God do that? I know the whole Torah. I know the whole Babylonian Talmud, the whole Jerusalem Talmud. I can't understand this. If God doesn't want to send Elijah, I'll send some other teacher from the heavenly court. And so I decided, said Mordechai, to take upon myself to go into exile. It was very common in those days, people to travel, to go into exile, to go without proper means, to travel and to through that suffering of traveling and not knowing exactly how to support themselves, it was a kind of penance people do in those days. So Mordechai took off. He said, I wanted to go to a place where no one knew me. But that was hard because I was already famous as a great Torah genius. So I had to go pretty far away. I was known as a genius, as a tzaddik, so I went far away. And I came to this place called, I came to the vicinity of Kiev, and I heard in Kiev that in the direction of Bukovina, there was a miracle worker. He didn't yet know, but they were talking about the Baal Shem Tov. And so he didn't pay any attention to this miracle worker thing, but he continued traveling, and he arrived in the city of Zaslav. He came to Zaslav in the beginning of the month of Av. He walked into the shul, and he sees a guy wearing talis and tefillin. It was in the afternoon. It was late set in the summer afternoon. And this guy's wearing talis and tefillin. Couldn't figure out why this guy wearing talis and tefillin, middle of the summer afternoon. And he was thinking maybe he's one of those people who study Torah all day with the talis and tefillin. But then he saw the guy siddur. The guy is in the middle of davening. He never saw anyone daven in the afternoon in his entire life. What is this guy doing? He never saw such a thing. So he people started coming to the synagogue, and they very friendly. Did you eat something yet? You're a visitor. Do you have lunch yet? And after mincha, they sat down to study the stories of the Talmud. Now he had heard the stories of the Talmud being interpreted in various ways as metaphors and everything, but he never heard such depth, of the way these simple people were discussing the stories of the Talmud. He was shocked to hear the way they understood the stories of the Talmud, the whole different depth than he ever experienced in his life. So that night, he stayed in the synagogue, and as customary in those days, some people come to the synagogue at midnight to recite Chassidim and other prayers. Some people would come to the synagogue as customary, and some people would say the whole Tilma every day before the morning prayers. They would call a Chevra Tilma, a group of people saying Psalms. They would come say Psalms, the entire book of Psalms, every day before the morning prayers. They would come in the pre-dawn morning and say the whole book of Psalms. And he saw that these people coming in the synagogue, they were cobblers, they were farmers, they were tailors, and they were reciting the book of Psalms with such warmth, such feeling he never saw. He saw people when he came from did that too. That was what everyone did. Everyone said the book of Psalms, but he never saw such warmth and such excitement, such enthusiasm, and it really touched him. He was so excited about this, and he decided he wants to stay in Zaslav. He stayed there for 3 weeks, and while he was there, two emissaries of Baal Shemtov came, Rab Nachman Horedenker and Rab David Farkas. They said Baal Shemtov sent us with a mission that we were to collect 60 florin, 60 gold florin. That was a measurement of money in that region. And the purpose of this money is to redeem people who have been put into captivity. We have to redeem them. So they right away set up a Jewish court to determine, to assess every individual in the town, how much they should give towards this fund. And they sent messengers out to the people to collect the funds. Some people whoever had the funds that the court assessed them with would give the funds. Whoever did not have the funds would put down a pledge as a collateral and borrow money. Someone else could give the money for them. And the people of the town were so excited, so happy to be part of this mitzvah. And he noticed that the morning prayers, the first minyan, the one that the people that pray at the next minyan, the early by daybreak, they were delayed because of this mission of collecting the tzedakah. And but although they were delayed, but the energy was such joy. And Mordechai is watching them, and he's thinking, why there's such joy? And he was thinking, maybe it's because the Talmud says, Ani b'tzedek the Talmud says, I will see your face with tzedakah. How do you see Hashem's face? By giving tzedakah. So he was thinking, maybe because they gave tzedakah, that's why they are so excited. But Lazar would always give a coin to charity before you prayed. Maybe that's the excitement. Then he said, but 1 second, they could give tzedakah on any day. They give tzedakah any day they want. What's this excitement about? What does this mean? Couldn't figure it out. Meanwhile, Rav Nachman Haradenker and Rav David Farkas went to the mikveh, and they began their prayers. And Rav Mordechai said, not only did he never see prayers like this in his life of Rav Nachman Haradenker's prayers, but he didn't believe it was possible to pray the way he was praying. He didn't believe it was humanly. He never saw such a thing. He never imagined such a thing that could be possible. While they were praying, those who had gone to collect the money were successful. Within 3 hours, the entire sum, huge sum of 60 gold florins was collected, and they came back to the synagogue. And meanwhile, the members of the court that was meant to assess everyone was middle of davening, and as well as the two emissaries of the Baal Shemtov. And they were the people in the town were wondering, should we interrupt their prayers? Should we stop them? And should we, because this money is meant to be used to ransom people who have been imprisoned, and we have the money now, and the money is needed immediately by the Baal Shem Tov for this purpose. So maybe we are meant to interrupt their prayers and send the money right away. But others said, "You idiots! What are you guys talking about? The Baal Shem Tov, yes, he needs our money, but it's his love for us that he gave us this merit to be part of this mitzvah of redeeming the captives. He surely knows," said those who said not to interrupt their prayers. He surely knows the money's been collected already, and it's only out of his love for us that the Rebbe gave us this privilege of collecting this money to redeem these captives. And as they're saying this, they hear bitter cries coming from the women's section. There were a few women whose husbands were not at home, and and they weren't assessed with any tax for this fund. One was a peddler who had gone from town to town to peddle his wares. One was a tailor. One was a teacher, rather. And they heard that the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, had sent these emissaries to Tzedakah, and they wanted to be part of it. And they weren't on the list because their husbands weren't home. So they were like, we want to be part of this. It's not fair. And they were crying, and they said, please, we don't have money. Can we give a pledge? One lady brought her candlesticks. One lady brought her Kiddush cup, her husband's Kiddush cup. One lady brought a pillow with down feathers, which was considered very luxurious. She ordered, please take this as a pledge so I can give this something towards the fund of the Baal Shem Tov. We weren't on the list. Please, they're crying. We didn't have this merit to be part of the list. We're not there. So the collectors said, well, our mission is done already. We don't have any reason to collect anything from you. We're done. But these ladies would not hear this. When they heard that, they started crying from the depth of their hearts. And Reb Nachman and Reb David became frightened hearing the way they were screaming. They were like wailing. So when the members of the court had learned that the collectors had returned when the mission was accomplished, they hurried through their davening, and against their better judgment, they decided we better accept the donations of these women, or else. And they, at 11 o'clock, an hour before noon, a messenger was sent to the Baal Shem Tov with the money. The special messenger was a shoe patcher. He was not a real shoe cobbler, as the previous Rebbe says in the story. He didn't know how to make actual shoe. He didn't know how to patch a shoe. So he was sent to bring the money back immediately, so the Baal Shem Tov will have the money to rescue this family that was in captivity. So when the Baal Shem Tov's emissaries, Reb David and Reb Nachman, finished davening, they made a special Sudas Mitzvah, a feast, to celebrate the great schus, the great merit that they had, that the Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, had given them. The Rebbe loved them so much, writes the previous Rebbe, that he had given them the privilege of participating in this mitzvah. And he was so devoted to his Chassidim that he sent his students, Rebbe Nachman and Rebbe David, to do this mitzvah. So they had this feast. The feast was dark bread, little herring, some pickles, and a bottle of mashke. All of the Chassidim were so happy. The previous Rebbe said, you can't imagine how much their delight was. You can't imagine how happy they were. They sang joyous songs. They danced, all in honor of the simcha, of the mitzvah they had to give this money to the Baal Shem Tov. The tzaddikim, Reb Nachman and Reb David, at this little Farbrengen they had, this little feast, they delivered words of Torah of their own, of the Baal Shem Tov. And in between each teaching, they sang a song. And during the song, says the previous Rebbe, the Chassidim would meditate on the teaching. When the feast was finished, Reb Nachman spoke about the women who were crying, and they were begging that their contribution be accepted. Reb Nachman said, the Rebbe is very fond of simple Jews. He said Reb Nachman, that the Baal Shem Tov says that a simple Jew who recites a chapter of Psalms with his whole heart and sincerely loves his fellow Jew is favored. He is a distinct, he merits a distinct attention from the King of all kings, more than the greatest righteous people. Someone who says Psalms with a whole heart and loves his fellow Jew sincerely, he is favored more than the greatest, the most righteous people. The Talmud says that, or Nachman continued, the Talmud says that Hashem is very particular about the behavior of the righteous. As the Talmud comments on the verse, all around him a great storm rages, the Talmud says that the word storm is related to the word hair, and Hashem is particular with the righteous to a hair's breadth. They should know better, and therefore Hashem is very particular about their behavior. But concerning simple people, the Talmud says, God does not come with trickery to his creatures. God does not ask us to do something more than we could do. It doesn't matter how well one performs as long as he does something sincerely. And since a simple Jew does everything sincerely, therefore he gives Hashem much satisfaction. So Rav Nachman said how profoundly genuine these women's tears were. Their whole desire was that their husbands' names be on the list given to the Baal Shem Tov as participating in this mitzvah. How precious their tears are. The mitzvah is so precious to them. The Rebbe is so sacred to them. So when they hear their husband's name is not on the list, they start to cry. Their tears, said Rav Nachman, are able to they're so sweet and so delightful that it says that the angel in heaven called Michal has 180,000 groups of angels under his jurisdiction, and their tears are they help, so to speak, the angels, because the angels of the camp of Bachol, they're the ones who stand before God and ask God to have mercy on us, and they defend us in heaven. So these angels could bring those tears before God. They're crying. They want to be part of this mitzvah. What that does for those angels, these genuine tears, said Rab Nachman, can annul all evil decrees. May God protect us. Then he went off and he said a short story. The previous Rebbe doesn't say exactly what the story was, but it could be the story that he's referring to as a story that the previous Rebbe shared on another occasion. The story was how there was a decree against a certain village. There was a drought. They were suffering from a drought, and this town took it upon themselves to fast, to ask God to send them rain. So this lady walked into the shul, and she sees everybody crying, praying for rain, and she turns to God with a few words, and she says sincerely to God, she says, God, I only have a few children, and when they cry out to me, my heart melts. She says, God, you have so many children, and they're all crying out to you, and all they want is some rain. Even if you have the heart of a Tartar, if you have the heart of a Cossack, your heart would melt to listen to them. So the previous Rebbe said that God listens to us, and those few words annul the decree, and that those words brought the rain. So that was Rab Nachman shared a story, similar story. And if only Rab Nachman said we could cry in Yom Kippur with the same sincerity as those women. And Rab Nachman and Rab David were themselves very, very knowledgeable in Torah. They themselves were perfectly righteous people. They were tzaddikim. And yet, Rab Mordechai is sharing all this with his community, despite the fact that Rab Nachman and Rab David were so righteous, and they were oblivious to their own greatness. And they took upon themselves to fulfill sincerely the words of the Mishnah, make yourself a mentor. And they took the Baal Shem Tov upon themselves as a mentor. And they had such faith in the Baal Shem Tov. And despite the fact that they were so great, they had such respect for the Baal Shem Tov. As the Torah says, your respect for your teachers should be the same as your respect for Hashem. So these were the ones who the Baal Shem Tov had sent to collect these funds to redeem these captives. So Rav Mordechai turns to his community and he says to them, you have to understand how amazing this is. There's a little village. It's 200 miles away from Baal Shem Tov. And in this village, there's a tenant, and he is living in a inn that he has leased from a squire. And 1 month he can't afford the rent, and the squire ignores it. The second month comes, and the squire takes the man and his wife and a few of the children, and he imprisons them in a dungeon until the money will be found. So the Baal Shem Tov hears about this, and the Baal Shem Tov sent these two tzaddikim to collect the funds, the 60 florin, to redeem them. The Maggid explained the greatness of the mitzvah of tzedakah and the greatness of the mitzvah of redeeming captives. And then he said how much the Baal Shem Tov loves this mitzvah of redeeming captives. He demonstrated his love by sending agents hundreds of miles away from the place where the tragedy happened. How much Avos Yisrael, how much love he has for his fellow Jew, he demonstrated. When a catastrophe struck a Jewish family, he notified the Jewish community so that they could share in their suffering of these people and they could help them. And then the Maggid, Rav Mordechai, started describing the reaction of the people and how they cried and how they were so sincere. And the Maggid said, what a sight to behold, that he saw how these ladies were crying and they were so upset. Their husbands' names will not be on the list. It is a custom, says Rav Mordechai, that whenever the Rebbe requests tzedakah, a list of the contributor's name is sent to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe reads the names. And these ladies had such faith in tzaddikim, and such faith in the Baal Shemtov, that they couldn't bear to think that their husband's name would not be on the list that was given to the Baal Shemtov. So that's a story, and it really highlights the level of devotion of the Chassidim of the Baal Shemtov to their mission and what Hashem asked of them, and opens our eyes and our hearts and our minds, hopefully, to realize how great merit we have to be emissaries. Every Jew in our generation, as the Rebbe says, an emissary of the Rebbe, to spread Torah, to spread Judaism, to spread the news of the coming Mashiach. We should realize the great time that we're in now, and we should celebrate and have real, as the previous Rebbe said, and the Rebbe said, we should realize that the Rebbe says this is absolutely true. The 12th of Tammuz is the day of redemption, and the day of redemption for every Jew to reveal who he is and what he is. L'chaim, l'chaim. So it's either emes redemption of the coming Mashiach Tzedekenu, and emes gute gesund for Baruch HaKain ben Chana Rivka, and Chaim Peretz ben Basha, and all these refuah shlema. Gute Vach, Rab Baruch, Rab David, Reis Binyamin. Who is that? Rab Beryl. And
Liba Rachel Basleya.
Liba Rachel Basleya.